Thank you, Madam Speaker, for this opportunity to reply to the speech from the throne. I'll mention at the outset I'm splitting my time with my good friend from Humber River Black Creek, and look forward to her speech as well. Madam Speaker, like you, I've been out and about with constituents and others, and generally the pattern of the conversation is to lament the progress of this pandemic, and then the conversation tends to move towards how are we going to pay for this. The programs that the government has put in place are generally well received and very welcome, and are life rests to very people in real desperation. And it's quite right to say that the government has taken its balance sheet and made it available to the Canadians' citizens. Nevertheless, there is going to be a day of reckoning. And if I may, Madam Speaker, focus a bit on the necessity of fiscal anchors. But before I do, I just wanted to point to the central truth of the speech from the throne. And that is that we need to do all that we can to restore the nation's health. This is the preeminent priority of the Government of Canada and should be the preeminent priority of the Parliament of Canada. Without the restoration of the nation's health, there simply will not be any restoration of the nation's wealth. The saying that the first wealth is health has never been more true than it is today. In 1993, the New York Times nominated Canada as an honorary member of the Third World. Our debt and deficits had risen to unsustainable levels, vulnerable to inflation, runs on the dollar, and other economic shocks. In 1997 through to 2006, the Chrétien and Martin governments paid down the national debt by something in the order of $100 billion, taking the debt to GDP ratio from north of 65% to somewhere in the order of 25%. Fiscal discipline and a robust economy allowed Canada to exit its honorary status as a third world nation and become the envy of the G7, the G20, and other OECD economies. We have been living on that legacy ever since. The emergence of COVID-19 has driven our debt to GDP much higher, and it's now in the range of 49%. Recently, the Parliamentary Budget Office issued a fiscal update. It made three sobering assumptions. One, that there will be no widely available vaccine for the next 12 to 18 months. Two, current response measures will be withdrawn on schedule. And three, that the Bank of Canada will maintain a prime rate of 0.25% through to 2023 and further maintain its program of quantitative easing. Between December 2019 and June 2020, Canada's real GDP collapsed by 13.4%, and the PBO doesn't expect it to recover to the December 2019 levels until March 2022. As the GDP goes, Madam Speaker, so also go the revenues of the government. I appreciate the PBO's candor and recognize that all projections, whether they're from the Department of Finance or the PBO, are subject to some very significant caveats. Madam Speaker, Canada is a trading nation. It's both a strength and it's a vulnerability. Our most significant trading partner has been in turmoil for the last 4 years. We might all hope that November 3rd might bring a more stable and predictable relationship, but we can't count on it. Our number 2 trading partner, China, seems to be determined to turn Canada into a vassal state, kidnapping Canadian citizens, making arbitrary trade decisions, practicing a hectoring diplomacy, and introducing mass surveillance, all of which makes the Chinese Communist Party an unreliable partner. The pandemic has woefully exposed our dependence on any supply chain that runs through China. In addition, our 3rd largest trading partner seems to be consumed yet again by Brexit discussions. So in this gloomy context of unreliable trading partners, an unpredictable virus, and unsustainable spending, what is a finance minister to do? Ultimately, the finance minister is the Dr. No of cabinet. But it's helpful when saying no to attach the no to a stated rationale. I, for one, would like to see a joint statement from the Department of Finance and the Parliamentary Budget Office giving their best projections on the GDP of the nation. In addition, I'd like to see some effort at reconciliation of any differences. It would be in the national interest to have a common understanding of our fiscal and economic picture. Second, I would like to see a fiscal anchor or series of fiscal anchors. If there is no fiscal anchor, Madam Speaker, the ship of state will inevitably go in dizzy circles. There are plenty of anchors to choose from. A stable debt to GDP ratio has the advantage of being widely accepted and easily understandable. The disadvantage is in the short run, it will deteriorate very quickly as both the numerator and the denominator are going in opposite directions. Another fiscal anchor is a balanced budget. At this point, it is an unrealistic fiscal anchor, as has been implicitly acknowledged by my friend, the leader of the opposition, who recognized that balanced budgets may be more than 10 years away. By the way, Madam Speaker, I was pleased to see him in the House and look forward to him being Her Majesty's leader of the official opposition for many years to come. Another fiscal anchor is inflation. Some say let inflation be the only anchor. Otherwise, simply let programs expand. Still others propose a cap on spending. The disadvantage of a cap on spending is that it's entirely arbitrary and lacks flexibility. David Dodge, the former Deputy Minister and Governor of the Bank of Canada, suggests a fiscal anchor tied to the cost of the national debt. He suggests that the cost of servicing the national debt not exceed 10% of government revenues on an annual basis. In addition, eventually reducing annual deficits to no more than 1% of GDP. As well, Mr. Dodge wants all government investments, all programs tied to an increase in productivity. Canada has, for quite a number of years now, been a laggard in productivity. My purpose, Madam Speaker, is to urge the government to pick a fiscal anchor or anchors, to recognize that the government of Canada is not the economy of Canada, and at some point, Dr. No has to say no, because to say otherwise would be to cut the ship of state from, quote, wise and prudent management. Canada is not like the US, where you can do wild and crazy fiscal things and get away with it because you are the world's currency. The Canadian dollar is a small currency in a very large pool. If either inflation or a run on the dollar occur, all the presumptions of cheap money are out the window. At this point, we do have cheap money, Madam Speaker, and let's hope that that continues because a number of the assumptions are based upon it. With that, I hope the government will commit to fiscal anchors and we can then have a realistic conversation about the program mix. I want to thank you, Madam Speaker, for this opportunity, and I look forward to questions from colleagues.
Questions et commentaires. The honourable member.
Questions and comments.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I want to thank the honourable member for a shockingly sensible speech, a speech I would not have expected to hear from any member of the government caucus. He made a lot of very good points. He quite rightly gave credit to the Chrétien-Martin government for adopting balanced budgets and reducing our debt. He quite rightly pointed out that in the early 1990s, this country literally ran out of money when finance officials went to lending markets and could not find a single solitary person on earth willing to lend $1 to the Government of Canada for fear it could not pay the money back. And at that time, our debt to GDP ratio is 66.6%. A half year ago, it was 30%. In other words, we had about 36% buffer of space between where we were and where we could expect to go bankrupt. Today, it is at 50% of GDP. In other words, the government has more than eliminated half of the buffer that existed between where we were and where we go off the cliff. That means the trajectory that we are on is not sustainable. The problem with cliffs is that while you approach them gradually, you fall off them suddenly. And once you're off the cliff, it is too late. Will the honourable member agree with Her Majesty's loyal opposition that a firm and clear fiscal anchor is necessary and necessary now?
The honourable member for Scarborough-Guildwood.
One always has a degree of trepidation when one is being complimented by the member from Carleton. However, his numbers are accurate, and I was trying to make the case that we do need to articulate a fiscal anchor or anchors. Without those fiscal anchors or anchors, we will simply pile up debt. And we've seen this movie before, Madam Speaker, when the Chrétien government took over in '93, we were in an unsustainable position. So I wish that we will be, I think that we need to get back to some position whereby we can sustain the necessary programs. The government rightly put the government's balance sheet in the service of desperate Canadians. However, Mr. Speaker, in the words of the great philosopher Wayne Gretzky, we need to know where the puck's going, not where the puck is.
Questions et commentaires. Questions, comments, l'honorable député.
The honourable member for Alberti-Maskinongi. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. My Conservative colleague forgot an important point in terms of spending levels, and we're starting to think about what the impact of this spending will be. My Liberal colleague in his speech said, yes, we're helping Canadians, but there's something that's bothering us a lot at the Bloc. The throne speech created two classes of seniors that don't want to increase OAS for seniors over 75 years of age. How does he justify such a position, this unacceptable position, because in terms of smart spending, this is a good one. This is money people need. Seniors will spend this to improve their quality of life and make our system work. So that's how we have to spend, Madam Speaker.
Scarborough-Guildwood.
Madam Speaker, I agree with the general proposition that you try to put money in the hands of the people that will stimulate the economy the most. And certainly whether it's the seniors or it's family, poor people with families, that's probably the best spending that the government can do. In my own riding of Scarborough-Guildwood, Madam Speaker, we as a riding are the #1 recipient of the Canada Child Benefit. all of that money goes directly to food, to clothing, to transportation, and goes directly into the local economy. So insofar as any program generates funding to go directly into the hands of poor Canadians, I'm in favor of it.
Reprise du débat.